Well, to discuss the latest developments around the investigation into corruption at Thembisa Hospital and other Gauteng health facilities, I'm joined now by News 24 investigative journalist Jeff Wicks. Now, Jeff worked extensively to uncover the dodgy contracts at that hospital. This, of course, was what Gauteng Health Chief Financial Officer Babita Deokaran was uncovering at the time of her assassination in August 2021. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. Just talk to us a little bit more about today's raid. What exactly were the Hawks after? What were they targeting?
Well, it appears that they were looking for documents and phones and laptops and any sort of evidentiary proof that ties in with their grand-scale corruption probe into Thembisa Hospital. I mean, we've been writing about this for more than a year now, and we're firmly in the belief that our reporting set in motion this Hawks inquiry, which is moving, which is a promising sign, albeit at a very slow pace.
And the Hawks saying they can't name the East Rand politician whose home and offices were raided. You and I both know the name of that person. For legal reasons, we're not going to name that person. But could you tell us a little bit more about what this suggests, that a fairly well-known local politician on the East Rand could be implicated in this?
Well, his role is central to this, and we say that because during the course of our investigation, we obviously got our hands on 60,000 internal emails and also the contents of Babita Deokaran's cell phone. And using that evidentiary basis, we've been able to prove that one of this individual's companies, by the way, he had 3 doing business with Thembisa Hospital at the same time. One of his companies, she questioned its legitimacy, and she reported it directly to her seniors. And that company and his 2 others, along with more than 200 more, were contained in a report of possibly dubious suppliers that she felt needed more scrutiny. And unfortunately, her concerns died with her, because despite reporting this to her seniors and despite her misgivings, she was ordered to pay them anyway. And then her concerns died with her. But what we're seeing today is obviously the first step of many in what is going to be a mammoth fraud and corruption investigation. When you consider the figures of more than R1 billion and thousands upon thousands of individual transactions, this is going to be a Sisyphean task for the Hawks. I think everyone should be buoyed by progress in that a raid such as what happened today tells us that there is some sort of forward motion. But like the spokesman for the Hawks mentioned, this is only the beginning stage of their investigation, and this is nearly 600 days after Babita Deokaran was assassinated.
And as you say, your expose did much to bring that to the attention, to the point that it could not be ignored. We've also seen Panyaza Lesufi, I think it was in December last year, just when he became Premier, making it very clear that this was something that was a priority for him. Do you think that's helped create a sense of urgency as well?
I think to a certain degree, yes, and I don't think we can understate the value of media exposure in a matter such as this one. However, in as much as the Premier seems keen to tackle this, or at least that's what he says outwardly, the process is now completely out of his hands. The matter has been referred upwards to both the SIU and the Hawks, and now we have to wait. We know that as of several weeks ago, the SIU proposal still was not anywhere near getting off the ground, as it still needs to go through a legislative process to eventually find its way to the president's desk. So I think that's a great tragedy of the story, is that so long after this woman and single mother was gunned down, we're still waiting for any sort of quantitative results, aside from what we're seeing just from left field, like today's raid.
It's not just Thembisa Hospital, though, is it?
No, absolutely not. I mean, our investigation has set it out that there were at least 5 hospitals that syndicates of letterbox companies were doing business with. And when I say letterbox companies, I mean entities which existed only on paper. They had a bank account and a SIPC registration, but beyond that, there was nothing. We visited their offices, or tried to, and we found vacant felts, churches, condemned buildings. So this is something that the SIU said as well in their findings in their preliminary report, that syndicate activity is rampant, and irregularities in terms of what they picked up tells them, and it certainly tells the reading public, that there is a considerable cohort of Gauteng health officials who either were completely asleep at the wheel or looked the other way to enable this to happen.
Jeff, do you believe the corruption has stopped at Gauteng hospitals? Do you think that all this media attention and this probe now has frightened everyone off?
I'm not sure those in our society who partake in such endeavors would be frightened off by something like this, and especially because when they see that there's so little accountability in terms of arrests or prosecutions, because to be fair, we've not seen that. And I believe that it emboldens people. And the converse is also true. Or another chilling effect is that on whistleblowers, when they see that there's no accountability when a whistleblower is assassinated, such as Thembisa Hospital, then it tells people that it's safer just to keep quiet. And that's when we start to face a real problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move to another story now. And this, of course, Thembisa Hospital was murdered in August 2021. This, of course, happened in July 2021. And that's the riots and the looting that took place in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, sparked by the incarceration of former President Jacob Zuma. Today, we saw the so-called Woolies looter in court, Thembisa Moloi. He's pleaded guilty to gathering a bag of items in a basket from Woolworths. He's also pleaded guilty around his number plate fraud. You, along with your colleagues, Kanita Hunter and Kavil Singh, you wrote 8 Days in July. It's a book about the looting, about how it all happened, the build-up. Let's not forget, over 300 people died in that violence and the looting that was sparked. To date, though, we don't see any kingpins facing the music. I mean, we see this chap, Thembisa Moloi, who stole a bag of groceries. I don't know, do you count Bonginkosi Kanyile as a potential kingpin? Of course, he's the Fees Must Fall chap who also got involved in putting clips on social media about the looting and about continuing the looting. Do you consider that his court case coming is a big coup, is a kingpin case?
No, but I would say that, I mean, the failures of the police and the intelligence cluster, or the security cluster rather, in the aftermath of what happened in July has been as plain as day. Someone like Bonginkosi Kanyile, in my view, is a mid-level or low-level agitator. And I mean, when you consider Mr. Moloi, who pled guilty this afternoon, he's at the very bottom of the run. But I think with the now self-admitted Woolworths looter, I think what's important to remember there is that why that got people so upset. You know, the popular trope of the unrest was that it was an uprising of the poor and it was spontaneous. But you see someone like him grabbing a bag of Woolworths food and rushing off to his Mercedes C-Class. It's a bit of a harsh juxtaposition. And that said, there have been very few prosecutions or even arrests of high-level agitators, because when we consider what happened in July, everything seemed to play out by design. That kind of orchestration is complex and it requires management. And I don't think we've seen the people who are really pulling the strings in terms of what happened in Durban and or in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal over those 2 weeks.
Do you think we ever will? And if not, is that because there are just too many important people that it's going to implicate? Or is it that investigators just don't have the capacity and the skills to get to the bottom of how this was orchestrated?
Well, I'm not sure, but I think it could very well be a combination of both. I mean, if you consider the investigative capacity in the South African police force, I mean, studies have shown that the solve rate of a murder is now only 1 in 10. And when you think about what happened in Phoenix with that swathe of murders, so few people have been held accountable. And now we're nearly 2 years on and time has passed and memories have been eroded. So it's becoming increasingly it's becoming increasingly more likely that justice has been denied for many. The argument could also be made that there needs to be a political will to hold the powerful to account. And we know from the Zondo Commission and the Sandy Africa panel that institutions like the police and the security cluster have been politicized. And whether or not there'll be an accountability, you know, as each day moves forward, the chance becomes less, in my view.
Oh, well, Jeff, thank you so much for speaking to us this evening about both those important issues. Jeff Wicks, of course, is a News 24 investigative journalist, also one of the authors of the book 8 Days in July, which looked into what happened in our country during that week or so of deadly looting and riots.